Earth is spinning. Yes, our planet has been rotating on its axis for billions of years, ever since it formed from a cloud of dust and gas. And we all live with the consequences of this fact. Thanks to Earth's rotation, we experience winds, ocean currents, weather patterns, and even have different lengths of day and night. But what if our planet suddenly stopped spinning? What would happen next? Would anything happen at all? Well, yes, actually, a lot of things would happen. Some of them would be good and some bad, but most of them would be just weird. Let's take a look. This is What If, and today we're answering the question, what if Earth stopped spinning? The first thing that would happen if Earth stopped spinning is that we'd only experience half of the weather phenomena we do now. Because of Earth's rotation, air and water get flung towards the equator. The Coriolis effect causes moving objects to deflect to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. This effect has huge consequences on our planet. For example, because of the Coriolis effect, air and ocean currents rotate around the Earth and form giant vortices called gyres. These ocean currents affect weather patterns and temperatures across the world. Warm water from the tropics gets distributed to higher latitudes, and cold water from the poles gets distributed to lower latitudes. Now, if Earth stopped spinning, there would be no Coriolis effect and thus no gyres. Instead, warm water would stay in the tropics and cold water in the poles, and we would experience much more extreme temperatures depending on where we live. Also, winds would not curve anymore. Planes could fly straight over an ocean without having to make any adjustments to their course. Weather balloons could travel all the way around the world without ever landing. Storms would travel from west to east instead of having that curved trajectory. And hurricanes would no longer spin. They would just move in a straight line like tornadoes. However, there is one weather phenomenon that would intensify if Earth stopped spinning: tsunamis. If Earth stopped spinning, oceans would quickly rush toward the poles, making tsunami waves up to 600 feet high. You see, gravity pulls everything toward the center of the Earth, including water. But the centrifugal force generated by Earth's rotation makes it bulge at the equator. So when Earth stops spinning, all that water that used to be flung away from the poles by the centrifugal force now falls back down into the poles due to gravity. To be more precise, water would gather on the sides of Earth that face the sun, creating giant tsunami waves as high as buildings. As those waves crash onto the land, they would cause catastrophic flooding, destroying everything in their path. The only places safe from these giant waves would be the regions close to the equator. Another thing that would happen is that Earth would start collapsing in on itself. Currently, Earth is a bit wider at the equator than at the poles, thanks to the centrifugal force generated by its rotation. It's about 43 kilometers wider at the equator than at the poles. Without the centrifugal force, Earth would collapse to a perfect sphere. And during this process, many mountains would emerge on Earth's surface. A mountain range would appear along the former dividing line between night and day, where the eastern and western edges of the continents meet. And other mountain ranges would emerge wherever Earth's crust is thinner. Another strange thing that would happen if Earth stopped spinning is that we would no longer have seasons. You see, Earth's axis is currently tilted at about 23.5 degrees. As Earth rotates on its axis and orbits the sun, different parts of the planet receive varying amounts of sunlight throughout the year. During summer in one hemisphere, that hemisphere is tilted toward the sun, which means that the sun's rays hit it more directly, leading to warmer temperatures. When winter arrives in that hemisphere, it's tilted away from the sun, which means that the sun's rays hit it less directly, leading to colder temperatures. If Earth stopped spinning, we would still orbit the sun, but because we're no longer rotating on our axis, the tilt wouldn't have any effect on how much sunlight we get. We would always receive the same amount of sunlight regardless of the time of the year. And so we would no longer have seasons. Every place on Earth would experience the same temperature all the time, at least until the oceans redistributed heat around the globe. So basically, if Earth stopped spinning, we would only have two seasons, summer and winter. Half of the planet would always be experiencing summer, and the other half would always be experiencing winter. Also, days and nights would no longer be 12 hours each. In fact, they would be 6 months each. The sun would rise in the east and set in the west just like it does now. But after the sun sets in the west, it would take 6 months for it to rise again in the east. That's because the Earth would take 6 months to complete a full rotation on its axis. And so we would only have two official holidays, New Year's Day and Midsummer's Day. All other holidays would either fall in the middle of summer or in the middle of winter. Speaking of the holidays, Christmas trees would look very different if stopped spinning. Now, Christmas trees are conical in shape so that the tree, as branches, can support the weight of ornaments and the tree doesn't topple over. But if Earth stopped spinning, we would no longer need to worry about the branches being pushed to one side by the wind. And so Christmas trees would look like giant cones instead of pyramids. But perhaps the strangest thing about living on a non-rotating Earth is that we would age differently depending on where we live. You see, time is relative and depends on how strong gravity is. The stronger gravity is, the slower time passes. On Earth, the gravitational pull is slightly weaker at the poles than at the equator, because Earth is a bit wider at the equator, and the centrifugal force makes it bulge. And so people who live at the equator are younger than people who live at the poles by a few milliseconds. If Earth stops rotating, that bulge disappears and the gravitational pull becomes the same everywhere. And so everyone on Earth would age at the same rate. But there is one place on Earth where time would pass faster, and that's the poles. You see, Earth is about 21 kilometers closer to the sun than the North Pole is. And so people who live at the South Pole are a bit younger than people who live at the North Pole. And speaking of youth, your skin would start to sag if Earth stopped spinning. You see, the centrifugal force generated by Earth's rotation stretches our muscles and ligaments and makes us taller. On average, people are about 11 centimeters taller at the equator than at the poles. Without the centrifugal force, our bodies would start to sag, especially if we're living at the equator. The most important thing to remember about living on a non-rotating Earth is that it would feel normal. Sure, there would be no more ocean currents or winds, and we would only have two seasons, but we would get used to it. It would become the new normal. And that is why the transition from a rotating Earth to a non-rotating Earth would be the most difficult. There would be so many things to get used to. Animals would go extinct, others would evolve. We would discover new ways of doing things, and it would probably take us thousands of years to adapt to living on a non-rotating Earth. Luckily for us, Earth will not stop spinning anytime soon. But if it did, at least we would know what to expect. Scientists say that Earth will probably continue rotating on its axis for another billion years. So let's just hope nothing goes wrong before then. But something else that won't happen anytime soon is the premiere of the second season of What If. Even though it's been a year since the first season premiered, we haven't had any news about the second season. Disney has yet to announce whether or not the show has been renewed. But don't worry, What If will return. Whether it's on Disney or on another streaming service, we'll keep you updated. Thank you for watching. And if you want to help us reach our goal of 2 million subscribers, click the subscribe button.